Former Patriot wide receiver Danny Amendola was on First Things First on Fox Sports 1 yesterday morning, and he was asked about the Patriot way, and the former wide receiver had this to say.
When you see Patriot way in the dictionary, it's going to have Tom Brady's name next to it. None of those coaches threw any passes. None of those coaches caught any passes. None of those coaches made any tackles. They got guys in the right position because they watch a lot of film and they spend all their time at the facility. But Tom Brady is the Patriot way, and that's the reason why Tom Brady's in the Super Bowl right now, and the Patriots aren't.
All righty. Sounds like a smooth segue to bring in Matt Light. Spent a decade there with the Patriots, won 3 Super Bowls there, founder of the Light Foundation, and Matt kind enough to join us. What did you make of Amendola's comments there, Matt?
I mean, it kind of sounded a little bit like an angry elf, right? One of those South Pole elves, Maybe he was trying to make a point there about something, and seems to be working. Look, when I was there, my 11 seasons with Bill, it was a roller coaster of emotions. There were days where you didn't want to hear it from Bill. You didn't want to hear the early morning, all right, look, you guys are terrible. We're never going to win a game if you guys keep playing like this. This is the worst football I've ever seen. Here, let's watch Light 700 times screwing up a block. It gets old. And by the way, it can get really personal, especially when you mix in contract talk, right? And the fact that guys do give up, the ability to potentially go make more money elsewhere. So is it personal with him at this point right now? Sure seems like it, but I think there's some truth in what he says, though. To me, if somebody asks me who embodies and who is the face of the Patriot way, kind of hard to argue the point that it's Tom Brady.
Take me back to the decision when Belichick decided to stay with Brady even when Drew Bledsoe came back from that injury. So 2001, you've just paid Drew. He's one of the highest paid players in the game, and you got a guy you're not quite sure how good he is, and Brady's won a few games, and then he decides to stay with him. As a teammate and somebody blocking for these quarterbacks, what did you think of that move at the time?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, okay, we had the Mo Lewis hit heard around the world. We have the $100 million man, largest contract, I think, at the time in NFL history. And we had the backup to the backup, right? I mean, Tommy wasn't number 2 in camp. He was number 3. I think it was Michael Bishop. And I don't know, I've been hit a lot. But, yeah, I mean, it was an interesting point in time. I can remember, though, in that season, we were on the road playing in Washington. And we almost came back in the fourth quarter to win a road game that at the time, it was still kind of unknown. Can he do it? Can he not do it? When's Drew going to be back? But even though we didn't win that game on the road, everybody felt, that Tommy had what it was going to take after that game. And then you fast forward to the AFC Championship game and he leaves with an injury, Drew Bledsoe comes back in, he's throwing darts down the sideline. And then we're going to the Super Bowl with no week in between. I mean, it was chaos. But, look, as weird as that situation was, it was really clear that Tom Brady was the leader.
But be honest, after the AFC title game, Bledsoe comes in throwing darts. You guys win, you're going to the Super Bowl. If I would ask you then, who do you want to start that Super Bowl, who would you have picked?
Honestly, you kind of had to go. I mean, I felt terrible for the situation for Drew Bledsoe. I mean, here we are going to a Super Bowl. This guy's put in so much work in the National Football League and comes back in for that, AFC Championship game and picks up right where he left off. But even with that said, as much as I love Drew Bledsoe, I really felt like Tommy earned the right to have that opopportunity at that point.
But he didn't throw any touchdowns in the playoffs. Leading up to the Super Bowl, he didn't throw a touchdown pass.
It's a stat that I didn't know. I mean, you wouldn't know that if you were in our locker room, right? And by the way, you're talking to an offensive lineman. I mean, just point me in the right direction, coach. Wind me up and let me go.
But how much credit do you give Belichick? Belichick doesn't get credit for making this move, right? I mean, as much as we can say, well, who's more responsible for the Patriots' success, Belichick or Brady? Belichick made the ultimate decision to start Tom Brady over Drew Bledsoe. I mean, he's got to get credit for that.
Yeah, and what a huge point too. I mean, you look at the previous season or two, right? And the lack of kind of people buying into the Patriot way and what it meant, and the idea that we're going to sacrifice a lot more than just what some other teams were doing and how they prepared. Because when you come to New England, you give up quite a bit, especially kind of who you are in some ways. Everything gets muted for the benefit of the overall organization. But yeah, I mean, look, Bill's made some unbelievably tough calls that, seemed kind of uncharacteristic for a head coach to make. I mean, I think about, that season in 2002, I think it was the following year after we won the Super Bowl. Lawyer Malloy gets shipped down to, Buffalo, the desert, right? And he was the best, one of our leaders. I mean, clearly one of our leaders and one of the guys that everybody looked to. I mean, that blew my mind. So, you never knew what to expect. But at the end of the day, what we did know is that Bill talked a lot about the decisions he makes are what's in the best interest of the team. And I know that that's something that coaches say. But I truly believe that that's what Bill and his entire staff do, even though it seems strange at times.
How much of a role did Belichick have in your tenure there with the Patriots with the offense?
It's an interesting question because, we had really strong people that were coaching the offensive side of the ball, right? Like I look back and, Charlie Weiss, he was going to tell coach what he wanted to do and why he thought that was the way to go. And there's always struggles on a coaching staff, right? The offensive line coach is pushing for more pass plays. The quarterback, especially Tom Brady, and the quarterback coaches are all looking for different ways to, get fancy and cute with the ball. And so there's this struggle on play calls and how we open and who's really the offensive coordinator on some staffs. But Bill, to answer your question, Bill Belichick had a lot to do with our offense.
Okay.
Everybody talks about him as a defensive coach, but, Bill really understands, not just the scheme, but how the other side is going to look at, defending against what you do best, right? And Bill's a big proponent of, hey, here's the three things that we have to do. That's what we did before every matchup. Here's what we have to do offensively. Here's what we have to do on the defensive side of the ball, and here's what we have to do on special teams. And there'd be 3 points to each week as we prepared. So, he knew as much on the offensive side as he certainly did on the defensive side.
Who do you think is most responsible for what happened in those 2 decades in New England?
I mean, look, I think if anybody looks at this season and tries to make a comparison at this point in time.
How about this, Matt? How about this? You can have Belichick as your coach or Brady as your quarterback. This is your rookie year.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go with Bill Belichick for a lot of reasons, right? Can he win without Tom Brady? Yeah, I think he can. I mean, we did it in 2008, right? If you want a case study to look at, we had a guy in Matt Castle, who filled in, did a great job. Same coach, same Bill Belichick, right? So I don't look at what happened this season and try to compare it in the realm of who's more important, Tom Brady or Bill Belichick. Look, those are two of the most dynamic people to play in the game, right?
But you think you could have won Super Bowls with Bledsoe?
Yeah, I think we could have, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't put either one of those guys down, right? I mean, but it is a system, right? New England is a system kind of scheme. I mean, it always has been, always will be with Bill Belichick as the head coach.
But Tom's the system, though. He's a system unto himself, isn't he?
He is now. Okay. And look, he has been for a long time. So, look, there's no surprise that Tom Brady's in the Super Bowl, right? The fact that he went to Tampa kind of shocked me. There's a lot of things that I found interesting. I didn't think that, I wasn't somebody that said, hey, just because Tom Brady's in Tampa, they're going to go to the Super Bowl, but it's not a surprise.
Did you ever have a drink with Belichick?
I've been drinking around him. I'm not sure you knew that. I saw him. I remember when the transition happened and he went from like only football and everything in football to then the Bill Belichick that we kind of know now today, that will maybe go down to the islands and enjoy a little bit more golf. So I've seen him relax and cut loose.
Do you have a Belichick story that I haven't heard?
I've got a vault, my
Well, you
friend.
can't get in trouble now, Matt.
Oh, listen,
You
got in
just
trouble
looked
while I was
over
there.
your shoulder when I asked you that question, as if there was somebody there going, Matt, don't do that.
Yeah.
Like PR
Well,
was staff.
My wife was worried that I was going to get fired or let go every week because I was always up to something that was no good.
All right, give me a Belichick story.
All right. So there was a time, and I've told this before, but this is a great one. There was a time we were at the Pro Bowl, and we had one of my teammates that was there as well, and he came as an alternate. And I told him while he was hanging out with a lot of guys that were more tenured than he, that when you're at the Pro Bowl, you don't pay for drinks. And especially if your coaching staff is there. I said, hey, look, here's Bill's room. And I made it a point to get Bill's room number. And I said, just fill it out, put his room number on there and sign his name. So I thought it would be funny. I didn't think he would actually do it, but hey, we're just having fun, little conversation. Well, about 5 hours later, and after he'd been hanging out with all the old timers who were already putting all their drinks on his bill anyway, which he didn't know. The young bucks never figured that out until it's too late. I see him walking from one side of the pool area to the other to hand Bill the check card. It's in his hand. And I'm the only person in the whole area that knew what was happening. So I remember I grabbed one of my teammates. I'm like, bro, you've got to see this. You have no idea what's about to happen, but it's going to get weird. and he walks up. He's like, I appreciate you, Bill. I appreciate you. And Bill has no idea what he's talking about, but he did sign it and he did pay for it.
Brady was a pretty good beer chugger, right?
One of the best, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Ross Tucker said that he was up there.
Yeah, you won't see any evidence of that. I think that stopped many years ago, about the time the whole TB12 method came out. Apparently, water saves you from getting a burn more than alcohol. So,
what if we were doing shots of kale? Do you think that he would be great at chugging kale?
Just stay away from strawberries, and everything else is okay.
But he wasn't different or strange when you were there.
No, I mean, look, he's always had his method. I mean, from the very beginning. As a matter of fact, before he was ever the starter, when I got to New England, the only person I knew in the New England region was a guy named Dave Nugent, who I went to Purdue with and was a roommate and came in with the class the year before with Tom Brady. So, I got to see Tommy, as the guy driving the yellow Jeep that was given to him by the dealer that wasn't the starter. But even then, the guy always had a method to everything he did and was always trying to do it at a very high level.
But what happens when he shows up with Giselle? Were you still there when Giselle makes her first appearance, or you find out Brady is dating Giselle?
Yeah, I was there when they were married. I mean, it was, yeah. I mean, there were some other interesting moments before that too that we poked fun at. But yeah, I mean, we saw the whole transformation.
And the clothes and just everything about him. He had a makeover, right?
Well, now you're going to force me to do this, okay? So imagine this for me, Dan, okay? I'm an offensive lineman. I roll out of bed at 6 a.m. We have a team meeting at 7 a.m. every single day. If you're late, you're probably going to be fired. And we've actually seen evidence of that in the form of a running back, right? So you're not going to be late. But when I roll out of bed as an offensive lineman, fat, sweaty, sloppy, I don't do anything other than just put on whatever was laying next to my bed. I walk into the facility, I drop all that stuff, put on my workout stuff, and I walk into the meeting, right? Let me contrast that with a Tom Brady. When Tom Brady walks in, and on this particular day, he comes in with the skinny jeans that taper all the way to a very tight point with the designer boots that were made by Tom Ford, custom designed, unbelievable leather, the whole nine, polished to the nth degree. On the upper half of him, he's wearing a cardigan. I'm talking straight out of like Mr. Rogers' cardigan. And this cardigan has a giant lapel. It's got wool knitted by some Sherpa in the Himalayas. It has hand-carved buttons the size of like my hand that are really cool looking. And I'm kind of angry that this is what I see walking in. So I bust his chops all the time. And on this particular day, I decided it was a good opportunity for me to go to his locker while he was working on becoming a better player and studying plays. And I put on his so-called Sherpa cardigan, and I went and I worked out in it. Now, the fun part is that the only thing I put on was the cardigan. Literally the only thing I put on. So when he was driving home to his beautiful place in Boston, where I knew he wasn't going to be able to get away from the ickiness of me sending a picture of working out in that cardigan, I took a lot of joy in that.
Did he keep it?
I think he probably burned it on the side of 93 going to Boston.
Oh, it's great to touch base with you again, Matt. Hope you're doing well, and the Light Foundation as well. Thanks for joining us. We love the stories.
Well, I appreciate it. And listen, the best storyline of this Super Bowl is ShermFightsForFreedom.org. Anthony Sherman, fullback for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's given away his truck. Anybody can get an opportunity to take home that man's truck. And he's one of the best guys on that team, one of the leaders. And if you go to that website, ShermFightsForFreedom.org, you'll be supporting the fight against human trafficking and supporting our military. So cool little backstory on him. He's a North Attleboro, Massachusetts guy, and we wish him luck and love the fact that he's doing what he's doing.
Give me that address again.
Sherm Fights for Freedom. Anthony Sherman, his truck. Anybody can get an opportunity. It's a giveaway. There's also cool prizes because his teammates are jumping in. I hear
great.
that Pat Mahomes is jumping in on this too, but Kelsey's in. He's signing jerseys. We got country music artists, the whole nine. So it's a cool giveaway.
You're a good man, Matt. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you, Dan.
That's Matt Light, former Patriots offensive tackle. A nice little appearance out of nowhere.